we throw away 1.3 billion tons of food every year. And as that trash piles up, entrepreneurs all over the world are inventing ways to use that waste as fuel. Like the man in Argentina, turning waste from a cider mill into what he calls biologs, used for barbecues.
No es cansado, sino es la gordura mía.
Or the town in Indonesia using stinky runoff from tofu factories to power gas stoves. And the inventor in Sierra Leone, who turns coconut shells into briquettes.
I was like, it's either it works or it works. It needs to work.
We traveled around the globe to find out how people are getting energy from worldwide food waste. At the Bowenpally market in Hyderabad, India, 10 tons of food go unsold each day. But instead of going to a landfill, it's turned into electricity that will power streetlights, buildings, and a kitchen that preps meals for 800 people.
The first step is to chop up larger vegetables and load them onto a conveyor belt. Some of the vegetables are spoiled. Others are thrown away because it costs farmers too much to transport them back home.
वो सड़ जाएगा तो फ़ायदा क्या भी नहीं है तरकारी में उसके लिए वो भी बायोगैस प्लांट के लिए यूज़ कर ले रहा.
The conveyor belt carries the material to a shredder, which further breaks down the food into smaller, more uniform particles. In a single day, it handles the same amount of vegetables that 150 Indians eat in a year. A grinder crushes the mixture into pulp, which is pumped through underground tanks and into 2 digesters.
So anaerobic digesters basically have bacteria which operate in the absence of oxygen, or anaerobic bacteria, and they actually eat essentially the food waste that we are putting in there and give out methane and carbon dioxide.
Any organic materials emit these planet-warming gases as they decompose. But the massive amount of food waste makes landfills the third largest source of human-caused methane emissions, just behind fossil fuels and agriculture. Burning biogas to make electricity is a way to harvest those gases before they enter the atmosphere. At Bowenpally, the fuel can be stored locally in 4 huge balloons until it's ready to use.
And it goes all the way to the kitchen, which is about roughly 400-500 meters away from here.
It's enough power to run a canteen kitchen that serves roughly 800 meals per day. Aside from energy, the plant creates another valuable byproduct: fertilizer. Farmers who sell their wares at the market buy it back and spread it on the same fields where their vegetables grow.
By using this fertilizer, their soils are also getting better, their crop yields are better, and their crops are being sold at higher cost because organic vegetables and all very costly nowadays, organic rice and all these things.
Dr. Rao, a scientist on the project, is already building 5 more plants around the city. And it isn't limited to vegetables. Biogas can be produced from any organic material, including animal and human feces. So if biogas can be locally sourced, cuts down on solid waste, and reduces emissions, why aren't we all doing this? Because in most countries, it's still cheaper to keep burning fossil fuels. In North America, biogas costs nearly 5 times more than natural gas.
Now, you can't compete with what you call gas in the United States if it's 20 cents a gallon.
This gap is smaller in places like Asia, where the difference in price is less than $2 per unit.
A lot of people, a lot of state governments who were thinking about setting up these projects have suddenly understood that yes, it's possible to do it. Yes, there are technologies which are indigenous, which are built in India that can work for them.
The world's biggest biogas plant was recently built in Denmark, and new facilities are being built elsewhere in Europe and Africa. An Israeli company sells a product to make biogas in your backyard. Biogas will never replace natural gas. There's just not enough waste to keep up with the demand for electricity. But it does something that natural gas can't. It helps reduce landfill waste. And it's a huge missed opportunity in the United States, which throws out between 30 and 40% of all food. Even the farmers who lose money when they can't sell their produce believe biogas is better than just throwing it away.
सड़ गया है तो माल बेच देना पड़ता, क्या करते नहीं बेचते, उन डालते उसमें वेस्टेज में वो अच्छा काम कर रहा है.
And the engineers on the Bowenpally project are hopeful that its success will inspire others.
So these projects have to happen, for us to make life more sustainable, not just for ourselves, but for, let's say, even 20 years or 10 years down the line, the scenario needs to be a little better.
In Sierra Leone, entrepreneur Alhaji Siraj Ba also hopes to inspire others to switch from wood-based charcoal to briquettes made from coconut waste. This squishy sludge could hold an answer to a deadly problem. Alhaji lost his adoptive family in a mudslide when he was 17. Disasters like these have become more common as deforestation increases, and tree roots, which hold back the soil during increasingly intense storms, begin to disappear. Alhaji hopes to save trees by making and selling his own alternative fuel source.
Bio-briquettes help prevent deforestation because they are produced from biomass waste. They are not produced from wood.
Coconuts are one of Freetown's favorite on-the-go snacks. Vendors end the day stuck with heaps of shells that they need to get rid of somehow, and that costs money.
This was supposed to be waste. They needed to pay transport to dump this thing. Now I'm going to pick it up for free.
Alhaji says his company, Rogsal Trading, collects about 2 metric tons of coconut waste per week. He's aiming for 10 tons by the end of 2022.
So this is the backbone of our products. This is wealth for us.
Workers clean the husks and shells and dry them for about a week. Next, they fire them inside this steel drum.
It carbonized for like 3-4 hours. We put the fire out using water. We have to wait for them to get dried.
They pulverize the charred coconuts into a fine powder and add water plus a secret ingredient to bind it all together.
The mixing is very challenging, so the whole process depends on the mix. A slight mistake on the formula, you have to start all over again.
The extruder pushes out slimy rectangular logs that will need to dry for 3 to 4 days. These ones are destined for shisha pipes. In fact, people who smoke hookah are his best customers these days. Rogsal Trading can produce about 0.5 metric ton of briquettes in a day, and they bring in as much as $4,500 on a good month.
We are the best-selling briquette. You can find our briquette in most of the supermarkets in town.
They go for 70 cents per kilogram. That's 4 times more expensive than the common wood-based charcoal, but they burn at least 4 times as long. Alhaji's next big challenge is to grow his sales to reach people who will use his coconut briquettes for cooking fuel instead of cutting down trees.
It's not easy, but it takes time. It's very tough to build something great. If it was not tough, everybody would have done it. So
he has 10 full-time employees and up to 40 part-timers, depending on the season. And about 1.5 years ago, he expanded his business. Rogsal Trading raises and sells chickens too. His mother says he's wanted to be an entrepreneur since he was a kid.
All day, they look Facebook, Magzugaba, we get Facebook. The man we get the man we get money pass all man. Not only they only say they watch, I don't they get money. Only for me.
But that all felt very far away when Alhaji suddenly became the breadwinner for his family at age 12.
We man die left pass bokutin pass made. Only wish they say, Mama, I forget money. If I get 22, 23, I forget money. I for pull you and pull. I for pull you and sufferness.
He left his village, hoping to make money to send home to his mother and sister.
I was just this kid who wanted to become somebody, but I was not thinking straight. I thought that it is just okay for me to move to Freetown. So without thinking about where am I gonna stay, who's gonna feed me, who's gonna take care of me, but I moved.
He lived on the streets for 4 years until he found a steady job and an adoptive family who took him in.
7 to 8 months after my adoption, I lost my family that I was living with during the mudslide.
Over 1,100 people died and 3,000 more lost their homes. Al-Haji was left with just a few dollars to his name. But he was desperate to do something to stop the deadly mudslides. In the decade before the tragedy, mudslides in Africa had already claimed thousands of lives.
One of the reasons that causes a mudslide is the vast amount of deforestation, because the roots helps to keep the soil firm.
Al-Haji began obsessively researching ways to stop deforestation. He found YouTube videos of entrepreneurs from around the world making biomass briquettes to replace wood and charcoal. He started saving money for an expensive mechanical extruder and perfecting his recipe.
Our formula is so outstanding that it can burn for like 4 hours. It emits lesser smoke.
He pitched his business idea at a Harvard competition in 2020 and won awards there and at the United Nations. And he recently landed new customers in Germany and the UK. But most people in Freetown still cook with wood.
You just can walk up to somebody and be like, hey, this is new, this is different from what you've been using. So it's a bit tough, but we'll get there one day.
Al-Haji isn't the only one creating charcoal alternatives. In Argentina, Jose Alberto Aramberi and his wife Cristina make biologs using waste from apple and pear cider.
3 rivers run through Alto Valle, creating a patch of fertile ground perfect for growing apples and pears. Each year, the country's apple cider industry alone creates about 75,000 metric tons of leftovers. This fruit waste is called pomace, and it's the heart of Jose's business, Biot. It all started with a dried piece he took home to run some tests on.
Trato de cortarlo y entra más o menos, no sé, 2 centímetros y de ahí empieza a largar chispas. Digo, epa, entonces esto, ¿y qué es esto?
He realized pomace could be used for fires. But the real challenge was figuring out how to turn tons of slushy fruit into solid logs.
¿Cómo lo usamos? Si es una sopa, ¿cómo te viene? ¿Cómo metes la sopa esa a la cocina, al fogón, la salamandra?
He had lots to experiment with. Since cider makers like Marcelo Garcia are usually happy to have someone take it off their hands.
Se convierte en un cuello de botella, dado que el no retirar el orujo nos complica porque no podemos seguir haciendo la elaboración.
Making this cider starts with fruit that would have otherwise gone to waste.
Realizamos el caldo con aquella fruta que ha sido descartada en los montes frutales debido a distintas condiciones como pueden ser daños por granizo, daños por helada, por el tamaño.
On the way to the grinder, the fruit travels through the factory in channels of water. A belt of buckets lifts the fruit to a mill that crushes it.
A orujo ya ha sufrido un proceso de 3 veces prensado para extraerle la mayor cantidad de jugo de manzana o de pera.
But the pomace can't get too dry, or it won't move smoothly through the machinery. So the cidery adds water back into the mixture.
Y por último se colecta a través de un elevador que se denomina este gusano sin fin, se colecta en una tolva.
Marcelo says the pomace has lots of uses, like composting, heating, and making vinegar.
Pero es un descarte, no es un desperdicio. Esa es la gran diferencia.
The biggest problem is moving the wet, heavy mixture. Jose gets pomace delivered to his property by the truckload.
Estoy trasladando un 80% de agua que se lo lleva el aire. Entonces, no lo puedo vender a eso. Entonces.
He's considered many ways to get that water out.
Con calor, con gas, con centrifugación y bueno, generalmente con hornos, ¿no? Pero bueno, eso llevaría al costo del producto muy elevado.
So far, the cheapest option is simply dumping pomace on the ground and waiting a few days.
Creo que esto es completamente natural y secado con el clima, con el viento, el aire y el sol.
Then, a worker uses a bulldozer to move the gunk into a specialized machine.
Esta máquina tiene una historia, ya que fue hecha e inventada por mí. Y no existe la leña de orujo de fruta, entonces no existe cómo hacerla ni cómo procesarla. Entonces tenés que inventar todo.
With the help of a tractor, the machine dispenses a line of pomace onto the ground and slices it into brick shapes.
Queda en el campo hasta por lo menos 3, 4, 5 días, en la cual se pierde mucha humedad y el pan toma una consistencia.
Jose piles up the dry pieces. He often tries out other systems, like drying smaller batches in a rectangular mold. The mold could help him make thinner bricks that don't need to be flipped.
Entonces venir mañana y chequear si bajó la humedad, no bajó. El molido lo experimento porque lo puedo yo utilizar en diferentes formas.
He's considered making other products like animal feed, but right now he only sells the so-called biologs.
Se va vendiendo paulatinamente que llegan los.
De chacra.
He founded Biot with his wife, Cristina.
Tenemos una granja pequeña con varias frutillas, frambuesas, pero lo más importante es lo que él produce, que es la leña llamada Biot.
She helps with the marketing and sales side of the business.
A él le gusta más estar acá en la chacra y dedicarse a la producción, y todo lo otro lo hago yo.
Jose says their different skills make them a good match.
Por ahí los caracteres opuestos se atraen, entonces bueno, eso fue más que nada todas las cosas, además de la belleza y el carácter y la inteligencia que la caracteriza, ¿no?
She sells the logs to some local businesses and to people who use them at home. Traditional Argentine barbecues, or asados, date back to the 16th century. Nowadays, lots of people use charcoal, but some say wood gives meat the best flavor, so it's popular with restaurants.
Es la competencia con algo ancestral como la leña. De recorrer varias parrillas, restaurantes, y todo el mundo te dice, no, yo hace 20 años que le compro leña a tal señor.
Jose says meat grilled with biot doesn't taste any different.
Sí hay algunas personas así exquisitas o que tienen un olfato mucho más fino y gusto más fino y dicen que sí, que le transmite, hay un aroma a frutal, a manzana, pero sinceramente yo nunca he notado eso.
Biot logs provide about the same amount of energy as regular firewood, and burning them has about the same effect on air quality. Jose says it costs the same too. And the business is profitable because costs are low. Customers have to come to his farm to pick up the product.
Bueno, es así, si te gusta, qué sé yo.
In 2019, Jose and Cristina supplied the local government with biot, which gave it out to low-income households. But elections brought in a new government that didn't renew the deal, leaving them with almost 100 metric tons of extra inventory. Cristina says their current processes are slow and difficult to scale up.
¿Cuánto podemos llegar a producir en una temporada? 1000 toneladas, un poco más, y no más, porque recuerden que se seca el sol.
But Jose thinks the technology will become more popular.
Y yo creo que va a explotar eso. Que se conozca ahora la técnica que yo tengo y después que se perfeccione por parte de algún profesional.
No matter what, he's proud to leave behind a legacy of invention.
Biot es sinónimo de Aranberry, es mío. Aunque nadie lo sepa, no me importa. Queda algo, que lo inventé yo. Si no, pasás por acá y no dejaste nada.
Over in Indonesia, one community is powering homes in a different way, converting stinky tofu wastewater into home cooking fuel. In a country that struggles to provide access to energy, this tofu biogas has become an important alternative.
The inside of the Haji Oji tofu factory is hot and steamy, with a sour odor that you can smell from outside. It's one of more than 230 tofu makers in Sumedang, an area of West Java famous for this product. But all that tofu comes at a smelly price.
Kamalu disebut desa pengotor, desa penghasil limbah. Itu tadinya dari situ.
Almost every step of making tofu generates wastewater. When that flows into nearby streams, the acidic runoff can kill off fish and crops. and as the organic material dissolved in it decomposes, it produces ammonia gas. Tofu starts with dried beans that are measured out and soaked.
Ini yang sudah 2 jam. Nah, kalau sudah 2 jam, udah besarnya dirasa cukup, baru dibersihkan.
Yusuf has been making tofu here for 18 years. He grinds the soaked beans to prepare them for cooking.
Kalau udah bersih, masukkan ke mesin, biar jadi bubur kacang.
The bean paste cooks in giant cauldrons. Workers stir the mixture until it's just right.
Biar masaknya rata sampai jadi air atau cuma naik 3 kali. Naik, lalu dijahit kayak.
Then they strain the slurry through cheesecloth. Excess water collects in drains. What's left is soy milk and a steaming pile of pulp called dregs.
Sisa ini. Dan ini buat itu Pak, nggak dibuang, buat makan ternak.
Adding vinegar curdles the soy milk.
Nah, setelah proses pengasaman beres, itu nanti menggumpal jadi kembang tahu.
The bean curds go into wooden molds. Heavy weights squeeze out any of the remaining liquid. Making just 1 kilogram of tofu generates 33 liters of liquid waste, containing whey and vinegar.
Oh, itu bahaya nggak buat manusia sama lingkungan, Pak? Si limbah sebenarnya?
Kayaknya kalau berbahaya sekali, Pak.
Just 5 years ago, the tofu plant discharged everything into the nearby river. But now, things are different.
Tapi kalau di sini dari kelompok pengusaha tahu udah dibikinin semua pabriknya, Pak. Udah ada jaringan pipanya gitu ke pabrik.
Pipes carry wastewater directly from the cluster of tofu factories to a nearby biogas plant.
Nah, ini dari ke-9 ke-8 pengrajin dari atas masuk sampai lewat.
Technician Pepin Sopendi has been producing biogas here since the plant opened in 2017. The facility treats some water to be released back into the river. Another pipeline carries more concentrated waste to collect in a holding pond. The 6 tall black tanks turn waste into biogas.
Setelah masuk, ada penguraian biodata yang ada di dalam, makhluk hidup seperti mikroba.
The wastewater gets pumped into the first reactor from the holding pond. Then, technicians introduce anaerobic bacteria, which don't require oxygen to break down organic material. As the microbes munch on soy proteins, the series of 6 digesters produces methane, a gas that can be used as fuel. The whole fermentation process takes about 20 days, but technicians feed new biomass into the reactors every day. Leftover solids can be used as fertilizer.
Limbah tersebut akhirnya bisa menjadi lebih bersih tentunya. Minimal 90% akan tereduksi polutannya.
Bau nggak? Nggak bau.
2S baunya, jadi bukan bau.
Naini Sintawardani designed and built this plant in Sumedang, as well as others across the country.
Tapi kemudian saya melihat jadi ada satu kebanggaan yang mereka ambil. Setelah mereka punya plan ini, mereka bisa mengatakan, kami tidak mengotori lagi.
In the last 40 years, Indonesia has built almost 50,000 biogas plants. While the Indonesian government funds some facilities like this particular plant is owned collectively by the community. Larger plants in other areas also turn biogas into electricity. The country's huge appetite for tofu means there's a lot of opportunity for growth.
Di Indonesia ini di mana-mana ada tukang tahu. Di desa 500 meter dari sini itu ada 19 pabrik tahu juga. Tidak diolah, semua dibuang.
The Sumedang plant supplies 56 households with a direct line of biogas, and it has the capacity to provide even more. One of those homes belongs to Deda Hidayah and her family.
Saya sebagai ibu rumah tangga, sehari-hari memasak menggunakan biogas, kurang lebih 5 tahun.
Today, she's cooking tofu with gas made from tofu waste. But this circular model has its limitations. Tofu wastewater needs to be generated, collected, and fermented every day to keep the flow of biogas going. Because of the working hours at the factory, biogas from the plant only runs to homes for a few hours in the mornings and afternoons.
Kalau masih ada gasnya sampai pagi juga ada gitu. Kalau gasnya udah habis, ya tergantung gitu.
Some Indonesians do have access to natural gas. But building pipelines across the country's 17,000 islands is a challenge. About 60% of its energy comes from coal. At the G20 summit in November, a combination of wealthy countries and private institutions pledged $20 billion toward helping Indonesia wean itself off the fossil fuel. Small biogas plants like this one could play a key role. And while they can't provide electricity or cooking fuel everywhere, they can help communities make something good out of a stinky situation.
Jadi mereka mengerti semuanya. Kami tidak ada yang kami rahasiakan. Nggak ada yang kami patenkan. Ya itu sehingga sekarang mereka sudah bisa menangani sendiri, Anda bisa lihat sendiri.
Hi, this is Will Story from the Insider Business Worldwide Waste team. We want to bring you more stories that take a look at garbage and the creative ways people deal with it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We also read all the comments. If you have an idea for a video you'd like to see, let us know. You just watch excerpts from some stories we've done about food waste being used as fuel. Click here for the full episodes.